I wanted to try something a little bit different this time. Today, I want to tell you my story about me, the person, Dr. Julia. My name is Julia Seda Lopez, and my story is a little bit different. So I thought you might be interested to know more. I actually was first kind of introduced to dentistry as a field when I was in high school. My favorite subject in school was always Spanish, and there was a local health clinic in my town. I grew up in Indiana. Because I was younger than 18, they had a rule where you could volunteer there, but you had to go help in dental, where some of the topics were possibly less medically sensitive than the medical side of things. So I was there at least one Saturday a month, typically doing spending my time there as a Spanish interpreter. It was a really cool experience and introduction to dentistry, but I was never there with the idea that that would be a field that I would go into. It, I didn't actually think I wanted to do anything medical at all. I enjoyed it, but I went on to graduate high school, went into college, and when I was in university, I was studying business initially. And I hit some of the accounting classes and realized that numbers and I were not going to be good friends. And I sort of had this moment where I was like, I really need to figure out what I want to do. And when I came up with sort of a list of qualities that were in a job, I wanted to be able to see direct results from the work that I did. I had the idea that I wanted to work as a part of a team. There were a lot of qualities about dentistry that actually were a match for the things that I thought I wanted in a profession. So I made a pivot and started studying more of the science classes and went on sort of the pre-dental track. So I did end up getting into dental school in Indiana, and I went directly into dental school after graduation. Dental school was an interesting time. It's sort of this really stressful time in life, but we made it through, graduated, and went on. My first few years out of dental school, when I thought dental school was stressful, the next few years were right there with it. So I had joined a larger sort of corporate dental practice right out of dental school. And I actually really enjoyed the concept that there was a lot of mentorship available from older dentists that were in my area, and they made themselves available to help me through cases. So there was definitely some good support, but there were also some things that I didn't love. But it was a really good place to get started into my career as a dentist. My husband and I then, well, he wasn't my husband yet, but we got engaged and he was looking at jobs back in Chicago, which is where he was from originally, Chicago suburbs. And we decided that we wanted to go have some adventures and try to live in Chicago together. So I originally lined up a job. We went to Chicago, and my first job there, I think on like the first or second day, I kind of knew it wasn't a great match for me, the office that I had set into. And so I realized that I needed a different working environment. And I was kind of at that point feeling like I was in a pinch. I was like, I'm in a new city, I don't have a job. And I came across an advertisement for a company that was looking to hire, a dental clinic that was looking to hire. And they had somebody who was going on maternity leave and they needed help. But what was interesting was they were advertising as a holistic dentist. And quite honestly, that word meant little to nothing to me. I had no idea what it was. I even kind of raised it as a topic to some other people, and they were like, it's probably just a marketing gimmick. Like, I don't really know what that means either. So I've come a long way. Anyway, I was greeted there in an interview by the person who owned the clinic and became one of my biggest mentors and taught me a lot. There is a definite learning curve that goes into stumbling your way into thinking about everything you learned in dental school and taking it to put it through a new perspective of biological dentistry. So for those who've maybe never heard that term, this is a way to do dentistry that kind of focuses more on the biology of how certain materials interact with your body as a whole. So looking at things like considering metal fillings differently, considering the oral systemic connection. At some point in time, somebody said the mouth is separate from the rest of the body and the rest of medicine. And this was a way to look at it differently and really think about how what was going on in the mouth was affecting the rest of the body health and vice versa. So I came into that role and absolutely felt like I was drinking water out of a fire hose, learning everything there was to learn in this new environment. But I joined the IOMT, which is where I got a lot of my education and training. Again, my boss was an amazing mentor, and I was learning so much from her just on a regular basis. But the person came back from maternity leave, and I was still able to stay on as a part-time dentist at that point in that clinic. But I needed to find a way to stay busy on some of the other days of the week. So I was really fortunate that through my boss, I attended a conference from the Holistic Dental Association. She was the president of that organization, and it was there that I first met Dr. Kevin Boyd, who, for those who don't know, is a very big pioneer in the idea of treating kind of airway dentistry concepts, treating it early. Fix before six is kind of like the term that's used often. So by the time we're 6 years old, so much of our craniofacial growth and development has already happened. And the idea is if we can get in there early for those who we see growth may be off track, we can make a huge difference in the lives of those kids. So I joined his team as a research assistant. So I was helping with some of the work with the Morton collection, which if you've read James Nestor's book Breath, is some of the skulls, the anthropological collection of skulls that we were comparing how things used to be to how modern day patients present in the world. So I've got a whole video on YouTube that you can watch about why things are a little bit different today than they used to be and how our skulls and our bones are really changing. So they're just kind of as a sponge, soaking up a lot of what I was learning in their clinic, seeing how this approach to dentistry was really changing lives. And I was really interested in that concept, but I didn't know where to start with my training. It was something that was pretty overwhelming to me. And so I took a few classes. But one of the things that I always struggled with was if there was someone near me who could do it better than me, I was a big proponent of the idea that you could refer out to another practice. I wasn't hungry to do everything myself. If there was someone who did something really well and I knew that somebody was going to be served well by them, I was the first to explain, you should go see this person and you should go learn about their area of specialty and how it can help you. So that was something that I was really fortunate in Chicago. There was a huge hub. So from physical therapy to tongue ties to early orthodontics, there were incredible providers that I could sort of become I often would joke that I was like a professional referring dentist because I would love screening for these problems and then telling and educating these parents about where to go. The one thing I'll say I didn't necessarily always do well was sort of in the practice I was in, I could have some of these conversations, tell these parents exactly where they should go. And in 6 months, they would come back in, and some of them didn't take my advice. And I would just kind of repeat, you should really go see this person. And I wasn't always making either linking the education to the best of my abilities to make them understand why this was important, or understanding kind of where their hesitation was in why perhaps a certain provider or a certain approach didn't fit well for what they believed in. And that on its own had been a big area that biological dentistry introduced me to. It was forcing me to really listen to my patients a lot more than I had ever done before. I think in my first few years out of dental school, I was really eager to sort of prove myself as an expert and kind of I've always had a younger appearance, and so I felt like I needed to have all the answers and be the professional for my patients that I was serving. Practicing in the biological dental office, my patients taught me so much about the importance of listening to them and what they know about their own bodies. And there's a lot of people who were really in tune to their bodies, and that was a different perspective for me to really understand that they were the expert in themselves to a certain extent. And together we could really partner to find the right solutions and outcomes. So we'll always be grateful to the patients that I met while working in that clinic. Anyway, back to the parents that I was having these conversations with. That's something that really didn't hit me until later, that like what was the disconnect in terms of making sure that I was so excited. I was telling them this problem I saw, and I had a solution, and I had the right people for them. And it wasn't until later that I started to realize more about how everyone really needs to figure out an individualized approach for them. So fast forward to at that point in time, COVID hit. We were stuck at home. My husband had just made a decision shortly before COVID hit. He was going to pivot in a new direction professionally. So he had just left his job. And it gave us the time to sort of pause and think about the future that we wanted to build. One thing that had always interested us was the idea of living in another country. Specifically, we had been to visit Portugal a few times and kind of had always been joking about, someday we were going to move to Portugal. And it was more of something that we thought we would do in like 30, 40 years after, our kind of in the retirement phase of life. But when everything shut down for COVID, we were really thinking about what's important in life and how we want to position ourselves for the future. So I definitely enjoyed doing holistic dentistry much more than I had enjoyed my first few years out of dental school doing just normal kind of general dentistry that we learned in school. And there was definitely a lot more of a feeling of having it being rewarding and having it feel aligned. But I wasn't 100% sure. There's certain things about my personality that didn't always make me feel like I was necessarily in the right profession. In light of kind of the shutdown in COVID, my husband and I, in figuring out what the future looked like, we weren't real sure what the future looked like, but we both knew there was a real possibility that we could pivot and sort of start over and make decisions from where we were at that point in life versus the decisions that we had made a decade earlier and what we thought we wanted. Portugal is home now, and it's been a wonderful place to live. I love it, and I could talk for hours about that alone, but feel free to ask me questions about that experience. The process of getting my dental license transferred, I did expect that there would be a delay. I did not expect that there would be quite as long of a delay as there has been. Still working out the details of that. But again, kind of seeing this as a downtime and a chance to really decide what I wanted the next decade of my life to look like. I did some reflecting and really thought about the fact that if there was a single part of dentistry that I love the most, it was the education piece. I had often thought about, should I be faculty on a dental school? Should I go teach? Because I had actually, for most of my life, been a teaching assistant. So I did some tutoring and teaching in college. I was a teaching assistant for an anatomy and physiology class. I did some Spanish tutoring. And in dental school, I was actually a teaching assistant for a dentures class, which is funny because that is not my favorite dental procedure to do. But anyway, I really enjoyed kind of being in a mentor role, having a role in education for others. So in thinking about, was there a way that I could take my experience and what I learned and the things that I really wanted to spend my time with and turn that into a way that I could still help others? So again, because I had always sort of hesitated to offer certain services myself, I was doing tongue tie releases for infants in my clinic in Chicago. But most other services that were sort of airway dentistry, again, I had an excellent network that I was able to refer to and was able to send adults and children alike to incredible providers. So I had a lot of base knowledge of all these different sort of approaches and techniques. And some of my friends were actually reaching out to me for information about their kids at that point in life. And one of my friends specifically, and she was like, you have something here, and like parents need access to this information. I don't know how this is going to come to life, but like, I think you need to think about this. So that planted the seed for me that perhaps I could take my love of education and the areas of dentistry that I really enjoyed learning about and turn it into a business. So I really initially set out with one idea of what my business would look like. And while I was setting the foundation for starting my company, I was also working in the business administration of a biological practice here in Portugal. So I was able to split my time between still kind of getting exposure to some really high tech and amazing things that were going on here in dentistry while simultaneously developing my own company. Parents who found me were parents who already understood that the teeth were a part of the equation, but they just were hesitant to maybe choose a certain type of treatment, or a certain provider didn't feel like the right provider, but they didn't know who else to go and see. So I decided to go all in on my business once I started to see some momentum. And, there's so many health coaching opportunities and things like that. I was kind of like, why not dental coaching? So most of my work has been directly to parents so far, and I meet parents where they're at, often kind of feeling stuck or overwhelmed in the decision process of this niche called airway dentistry. An area that I love. Again, I was a teaching assistant for anatomy and physiology. I really like kind of how the structure and the body functions and how that all comes together. And I've been sort of an endless learner of these topics. So I couldn't even tell you how many different types of CE, continuing education courses and things like that I have just endlessly pursued in order to make sure that I'm constantly learning more and more to better understand this topic myself. And I'm taking all that information and trying to make it accessible for parents to understand what's going on and how their child can be helped by this approach. More recently, I've had the pleasure to connect with some more professionals that are interested in this topic as well. My passion is truly in education and making sure that families are able to connect these dots and find solutions and feel more confident moving forward. So that is kind of my story and my business. If you know somebody who you think might benefit from learning more about these topics, I would welcome the opportunity to connect. If that's you, you're watching this because you're interested, certainly reach out. At the moment of recording this, I do offer a free 20-minute discovery call because I know that what I offer is a little different. I'm not diagnosing anyone with anything. I'm really simply understanding the problems you're facing and helping to guide you on the path towards what might feel like an aligned solution. If that involves dentistry, myofunctional therapy, sometimes it's just maybe working with a sleep coach or working with someone in functional medicine to address anything that's holding up nasal breathing. I really believe that there's a role for interdisciplinary care and making sure that different providers from different parts of the healthcare system are working together in order for patients to get the best outcome. So I invite any of you, whether you're a parent or provider, to reach out and connect with me. I'd love to learn more about your story.